The National Association of Hispanic Nurses Education Committee would like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar on how to write and submit an abstract. I am NAHN Education Co-Chair, Nora Hernandez-Pupo, and I will be walking you through the NAHN's 48th Annual Conference Abstract Submission website and process. I am lucky to be joined today by the Hispanic Health Care International, HHCI, Editor-in-Chief, our very own Maithe Enriquez, who will be providing a basic overview on the best practices for presenting an abstract. Together, our goal is to summarize the tips and steps to prepare you for developing your own abstract submission for NAHN's 48th Annual Conference in Portland, Oregon. As you watch this webinar today, please keep in mind the following dates. Our abstract submission will close February 1st, 2023 at 12 a.m. Eastern Time. NAHN will announce the abstract selection in March of 2023. Our conference is scheduled for Portland, Oregon, July 11th through the 15th of 2023, our NAHN's 48th Annual Conference. And now we will begin the session. If you have any questions, please use the chat function to share them with us, and I will be your moderator today. This webinar will be recorded and will be posted on NAHN's website for your reference. Thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm going to see if I can share my slides. And if somebody would be kind enough to tell me if you can see the slides and hear me, that would be great.
You're coming in loud and clear. We can't see your slides yet, though. There we go. Perfect.
You can see them. Oh, excellent. Okay, so let's start. For those of you who know me, you know I do not mind at all if you interrupt me and ask a question. I'm happy to take questions, or we can do them at the end. I intentionally made this a little bit short, because I'm really hoping people have questions, and we can take them either at the end of the webinar, which might be good after we talk about the logistics of submitting the actual abstract. What I'm going to talk about is more generalizations about writing the abstract for presentation at a conference. So why submit an abstract, or why present at a conference? For those of you who might not have done it in the past, we do that, of course, to advance the science and to advance clinical practice, to share our interventions, to share our successful strategies. Sometimes I think it's okay too to share things that don't work, because that's also important, to share what maybe we try and didn't work, or how we fixed it, etc. So it doesn't always have to be a success story, but a learning experience. It's rewarding. It indicates you're a thought leader. And as the editor of the journal, I had to throw in that presenting an abstract is a great way to then transition your work to a publication, because you get a lot of great feedback about whatever your project or your study is. And then you can use that to put in your manuscript and really enhance a manuscript. And of course, anytime we do a project or a study or an educational endeavor, I believe that publication is very important, because that's a really good way to share with a lot of people. And then that publication stays there for a long time, and people can look it up for years to come. So preparing an abstract is a skill that's learned. It takes time. I will probably say that several times, that it's really important that you start early, because I honestly think it's harder to write an abstract, which is a condensed version of the aspects of a larger project, rather than, when you have pages and pages and pages. So it requires a lot of boiling down of your work and really tightening it up and putting it into a short piece of writing, which, at least for me, sometimes takes longer than actually writing something that I have pages and pages. So again, I want to encourage people to start early of course, that depends on your experience level. If you've written many abstracts, you probably already know how long it's going to take. But one thing that can take time, even if you're an experienced writer, is the number of authors. So if you have an abstract, sometimes when we work in teams, we have 8, 9 authors. You have to get each author to review, each author to buy in, each author to make edits. That can take a long time. So, I always like to give myself a month. I know that's not always possible, but especially if you have a lot of co-authors, I think that is a good thing, because when we talk about submitting the abstract, there's information you'll need from all the co-authors in order to actually submit. And one thing I'm sure we're going to talk about later, but I wanted to throw in, is that also give yourself enough time to actually upload the abstract once you have it written, because as you know, there can be glitches in technology, or you might have questions and have to reach out for IT support. And so again, give yourself a couple days to get it submitted, not wait until the very last day. It's very important that you adhere to the required format and follow the instructions. Most abstracts are structured, which means they have certain categories that you have to put information there. And when I've been an abstract reviewer, sometimes what I see is that people put the information under the incorrect heading, which, it might cause your abstract not to be accepted. So be sure you follow the instructions, and pay special attention to word limits and character limits, because there are some conference committees that if you don't follow all those, they won't review the abstract. And then before you start writing your abstract, there's a few things I think are important to think about, and that is, who will be the people attending your podium presentation or your poster? Another thing you need to think about is, which format are you going to prefer to present your work? I can just speak about myself. There are certain projects I've done that I thought, oh, I could do it either way, as a poster or a podium, but there's some that, whatever the work was, I wanted to show a video, or there were just certain things I wanted to include that I thought were important that I couldn't do that in a poster. And so I would just check the box for podium. Or, you can check either, but it's something to think about, is how do you want to present your work, and how do you think it'll be best received by the audience and make the impact that you want it to make. Think about what's important or significant about the work you're going to present, whether that's a research study or an evidence-based practice project or a QI project. Was it a leadership project or an educational endeavor? But think about what it is that's important, and that will give you guidance as to how you want to write it. And I think thinking about those things in advance really helps you write it, instead of just sitting down and starting writing. I at least for me, thinking about what I'm going to write is like 90% of the work, and then writing it it becomes easy after you give it a lot of thought, at least for me. So the purpose of the abstract is that you want to convey the following to the reader or reviewer. Obviously, you want the reviewer to accept your abstract. So think about the reviewer too, is, why did you start or engage in this particular project or study that you are submitting the abstract about? What did you do? What did you find? And what do the findings mean, or what are your conclusions? So we'll talk about all those things one at a time, but let's start with the title. So the title is important, really important. I think especially in an abstract where you only have a few, a set number of words. And so your reviewer is basically just reading your title and then how the number of words that are allowed. So you want to make sure your title accurately represents the study or project that you want to present, that your title is easy to understand, and that you can convey as much as possible the context or aim of your project or study in the title. If your title has a take-home message, I think that's really a good thing. And again, be sure you adhere to the instructions, because often for conferences, there will be a limit as to the number of words or the number of characters that you can submit for a title. So as I go through here, I actually pulled out one of our old studies that we did and that we presented, and I chose this one. It's from a number of years ago, but I chose it because we actually presented it as the research study when we finished it, but honestly, we could have presented it also as a clinical presentation while it was still in real time. So I chose it because I'm not exactly sure what kind of projects you all are thinking about presenting, but I anticipate that some of you have clinical endeavors that are in real time that you want to present. Some of you have studies that are, already completed, but this one, we could have presented it either way. So this is our title: Impact of a Bilingual Bicultural Care Team on HIV-Related Health Outcomes. And, it kind of pretty much tells you what we did and what we were striving for there. When you list your authors, remember that the authors are the individuals who actually did the work. The order of authorship, just like if you're writing a manuscript, I encourage you to decide the order in advance. Typically, the first author is the person who's going to present the work at the conference, the person that developed the project or the study, and the person who did the majority of the work. Not always, but usually sometimes, you're like 50-50, and then you just have to make a decision who's going to be first. And then if it's a group, a team, usually the senior author is last, or the person who's the mentor is last. I think this is just me, that full names and formal credentials should be used. I know sometimes people use nicknames, but I do think it's important, especially if you're starting your career, to start your full name and stick with that, so that as you go on and progress, you can build your resume. So the introduction or the background of your abstract, and this presentation is, some of it is just general information, because while we're going to be talking later about specifically about how to submit an abstract to NAHN, I anticipate that many of you go to more than one conference a year or submit to more than one conference. So I have this kind of in generalizations. So you want in your introduction to be sure and give some background. Why did you start or engage in this study? Why is it important? Why, the why, the so what. So in this one that I chose, at the time we did it, and this is still true today, that effective and practical clinical interventions are needed for the population of Hispanic individuals living with HIV who struggle with the rigors of lifelong antiretroviral therapy and are failing treatment due to non-adherence. So that is a problem in this patient population. It's a very important problem. And so whatever it is that you are passionate about, you need to convey that in your abstracts, like in a very few words, because usually abstracts have pretty tight word limit. And then in your methods part, you want to talk about what you did, whatever it is. In this study, I used this as an example. I also used one of my own examples, because that way I don't have to worry about, getting permission or anything, or plagiarism. I mean, it was our work, our team's work. So it was a what we did after we did the clinical intervention, we went back and retrospectively looked at the medical records to then show efficacy. So here is our methods, and you can read it there. But again, you want to state it in a concise way where it tells you exactly what we did. So, here exactly there were 43 patients. It was retrospective. We looked at medical records, the time frame we did it in, and that we looked at the data, pre and post intervention, but we did it after the fact. And what we found, in this case, we found that patients had more clinic visits after we started our bilingual care team, bilingual bicultural, and that a higher number of patients had suppressed HIV viral loads, which of course is the ultimate goal of HIV treatment, is to totally suppress viral load. So that was our big finding, and that's what we put in the abstract. And then what are the implications or conclusions? That's something you want to always have at the end of an abstract. And in the example I'm using here, our study suggested that the provision of care by healthcare workers who are bilingual bicultural, together with the use of culturally and linguistically appropriate patient education materials may enhance the health outcomes of Hispanics living with HIV disease. So overall tips for writing an abstract: be clear and concise. I think that's really important. You want to state your point very clearly, because you don't have that many words. And if you're not clear, I can just tell you as a reviewer, it's really difficult because usually as a reviewer, what you have is a rubric where you have to assign points. And there's certain things you're looking for, and if it's not there, it's very hard to give the points required for that abstract to be approved. Write for your audience. Remember who's going to be there. Another thing to think about is the conference itself. What is the theme or the goal of that conference, and make sure your abstract is a fit. Make sure your title contains a key point. Make sure you have your take-home messages. And remember that in an abstract, when, really less is more. If you don't need all, I'll just make up a number. If you have 500 words or 300 words and you don't need 500 words, don't just add stuff. You can be under, but just make sure it's clear and concise. And then I think it's very important, I myself do this for all my manuscripts and abstracts. Have someone review it before you submit it. Someone with experience and someone who's been successful in having, in this case, abstracts, accepted, and that they've given presentations. Because you really want someone with that kind of experience that can give you tips. And the other tip I'll give you is when people give you feedback, don't take it personally. It's nothing personal. It's just that, that person wants you to get accepted. So, just take it like with a grain of salt. It's really nothing personal. And with that said, if there's anyone that you don't feel like you have someone that can, on your team or in your, among your colleagues or in your clinical setting that can review an abstract, you want like an impartial person, I will just offer, I'm happy to read any of your abstracts. If you want some feedback, I'm happy to give it to you. In this case, since I'm not a reviewer, I feel like I can give you feedback and be impartial. And there's my email. It's noneditor@thehispanicnurses.org, or if you can text me on WhatsApp. I'm really honestly more than happy to help. I love to do this kind of stuff and help people and as with writing and abstracts or publications too. With the case of publications, when you're submitting them to the journal, I really can't do that. But in this case for abstracts, I absolutely can, and I'm happy to. And here's a resource. I think this is a really good article. It's dated, but this is kind of like, this article is one of those that it stands the test of time, kind of like a good movie. You can watch it many times over the years. And this article is one that, even over the years, I think it's really good. And it's a good resource for students or for people who are just starting to write abstracts, or even for those who have written many abstracts. It's good to go back and read and see what's really important. So I'm going to stop the share, and I'm hoping later you have lots of questions. I'm happy to do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. We actually do have a question from Kim, and she's asking, how do you recommend editing the abstract down? It was hard to get all the needs pieces in a 500-word requirement. That's always a struggle.
So, oh, hi, Kim. I see her little hands. I know him. So I think that's where having somebody else read it and help you edit it really helps. So one of my friends she's also a journal editor, she always helps me edit my stuff, and her name is Pat, and she always calls herself Pat the Knife, because she will take my abstracts and just cut them down to, if it's needs, because some of these journals want you to write an abstract in 150 words.
Yeah.
It is hard. It's really hard. And then, of course, you as the writer think every single word is important. And so it's really good to have somebody else that's neutral. So Pat always does that for me. She chops it down, and when she gets done, it's like, well, yeah, wow, she said the same thing in, however many less words. So I do think that's one way to if you get somebody that's experienced and can help you. And then after a while, you can do it yourself. But especially when you're starting, it's hard.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I'll go into my part. So I'm going to bear with me for a second while I share my screen. This is our homepage. So when you go into nahn.org, this will bring you up to our homepage. And right now we have our Hispanic Health Policy Summit, February 9th through the 11th in Washington, D.C. So you're able to register and go there. But today we're going to go through the submission process for our 48th annual conference. So the first step you need to do is you go into events, and you're going to drill down till you get to 2023 annual conference. You're going to click on that. And this brings you back to where we were. So this is our screen here. And you can see on the default where it's going to talk to you about your submission guide, where you can open that. It's going to tell you the tracks. Here, you'll also be able to complete the abstract reviewer questionnaire if you wish to volunteer to be a reviewer. It's just 3 simple questions. You can click on that. That is due by January 10th. So, and then further down, it's a little bit more about airfare and a sponsor or exhibitor. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on Submit an Abstract. And it's going to go again through kind of like what I call the infomercial of the conference. It's going to tell you where it's at. It's going to tell you, again, our deadline for submissions is February 1st. And then it's going to go over the learning objectives, our categories, our tracks. And then this is where you would go into log in to the abstract scorecard. So full disclosure, I went in a few minutes before we started our conference, and I went ahead and I became a user. So everyone should start here, even if you submitted in the past. That is a best practice. So you would click on new users and create your account. So I did that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just log in. And this is your default page. Now, when I look at my profile and my home page, you know, the default one, I said, oh my goodness, I made a mistake. It's very easy to go back. If you make a mistake in your profile, all you have to do is click here where it says edit your profile. And when I went down to my credentials, you see that here I made a little mistake. So you can just go ahead and erase that and submit. And then you just update it. So don't ever fear that you are married to that if you make a mistake. It's very easy to update your phone number or your address or any of the contact information. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start. If you see here, this little plus sign says click here to begin a new abstract. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And it's going to start us off with our title. So typically titles are anywhere from 50 to 100 character spaces. So this is a test. So I'm going to go ahead and put just test of abstract. And then our proposal category. So I'm going to I'll pick podium or poster submission. So if you don't know quite where or what you want to do, and you feel that your abstract or your study, what you're presenting, or you want to share can be either poster or podium, and you're not married to one or the other, you can pick podium or poster. Or if yours is podium, and then you can click them individually as well. So I'm going to go ahead and just click podium or poster. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. As you can see here, our title is 200 character spaces maximum. So that gives you a lot of wiggle. We're going to go ahead and hit submit. And once you do that, it's going to give you an abstract ID number. So this is your ID for your whole submission. Okay. And there's a couple of components here. So new abstracts was successfully added. That's my title, right? And it says podium or poster, and I'm active. So here you would go through all of your sections. In total, there's 7 sections. The first section is corresponding author. So this is your primary presenter. And it defaults to my profile that I've entered in. And it still is missing a couple of information. So you would just go in and edit your profile and fill in the items that you still have to submit. And then you would save primary contributing author. Now you would go back into tasks. And that would bring you right back into your line numbers again. So the second is abstract description. Again, it goes through the requirements. Right through here, all of your components, it tells you what you need to keep in mind. So the first thing it's going to ask you, and everything with a little red star, I think we all know and are used to that it has to be answered before that section is considered complete. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the track. I'm going to go ahead and put evidence-based practice. Has this abstract been published before? So typically, we give first preference to abstracts and projects that have not been presented before. But you do have to disclose if it has or it hasn't. I'm going to go ahead and click no. And then if your answer happens to be yes, you would put here when and where. Okay, so for example, let's just go back. I'm going to put yes, and I'll say NLN, July 2022. Okay, and Vegas. Okay. So here, abstract description. So this is your abstract. It's 500 words. So you would enter the body here. So start. Description. Once you're finished, you would hit continue. And it keeps track here, which is very helpful, of how many characters you have left and where you're at in the, also autocorrect, so it's good. We can continue. So you see how this section is completely finished. I have filled in all the required sections within that category task. So I get my little green check mark. Okay. Here, you're able to add co-authors. So suppose that I have multiple authors. This is a maximum of 10 authors. So you would click here, add a new co-author. And we would put, I'm just going to use the word test over and over again, so it makes it easier to find the submission. And then your credentials. Okay. So you go through it and then you hit submit. And then once you've done that and you finish adding all of your co-authors, you would save your co-author list. Again, there's my little check mark. It means I'm done. Now your co-author CV and bio. Ooh, let's click on each task. Won't let me go. Upload to co-author resumes. Oh, okay. So it's not letting me upload my CV or my bio until I finish putting in my primary presenter. So let me go back in here and let's see what's missing. Okay, so this is back when you're putting in your profile. So these questions popped in. If accepted to present this conference, I agree to follow. Oh, so these are your disclosures. I also understand that all podium and poster presenters must register and pay to attend. So you can click yes. Here you're going to put your short bio. So here you're limited to 100 words or less. So 100 word bio. And here you would upload your CV. Let me find my CV. This does take a little bit for you to find all of your information. So now you know you need a short bio and a CV. So you can have those ready, saved on your computer. And I'm just going to go ahead
and I think this is a great chance to explain why we ask for the CV. That's actually a bit for the background we need in order to process for CEU credits. We need that for that primary speaker.
Perfect. Okay. So I had my bio already, but I dropped it into my CV so that it would kind of close off that section. And then, are you a member of NAHN? Of course we are. We click yes, and we hit continue. And then no photo. I'll put no photo available at this time. Here's a picture for you. Here's a nice image. And now you see I have my little green check mark, which should be on my task list, also finished. So now I'm down to 4, co-author CV and bio. So you would do the same thing I just did under my tab for your co-author. Measurable behaviors and outcomes. So here's where you will upload your learning objectives. So learning objective 1, learning objective 2. And I'm going to say, okay, so I'm going to see here 3. And I'm going to go ahead and click continue. So copyright and permission. So here's where, again, a disclosure where you are agreeing to the terms and conditions of the copyright statement. And then you would hit submit. This council is correct for me. Okay, let's see. It's very specific about the hyphen. All right, so this is additional information. So this is just basically your instructions on appearance, your continuing ed requirements, your audio visual. And it's recommended that, especially if you're doing a podium, that you bring your tables for your computer and a fully charged laptop. That's always the best practice. Was the abstract researcher or author the recipient of a scholarship grant? So this is if you've received any of the grants or scholarships from NAHN 2022 or 2023, be a yes or no. Was this abstract developed with direct support of national committee? Did you or the co-authors receive any funding? So if it's not applicable, you put no. Are you submitting this abstract on behalf of a NAHN chapter? And then you click continue. And that's it. Once you're done, you would save your submission. And pretty much the only thing that's missing is your co-author CV and bio, which is the same exact thing that you would do as we did before. And it has multiple. Right? So we can go here. I have new co-authors. You can continue. And I'm done. I saved my submission. And that's it.
And there is one more step, the most important one right there. There you go.
Yeah. Now we're done. So we're completely finished and we're going to go ahead and click submit right up here. And then it tells you that you have completed it. Right here where it says the status of the abstract, it says when you were completed, date and time. You can always go in if you realize that, oh, I forgot to do this, or I've come up with something better to add, or a better picture, or any of those things. You can always go in and edit it until the date it closes, which is February 1st. Okay. Any questions? You can go ahead and stop sharing. So the process itself is very easy, and it's you just follow your tasks. Again, a best practice would be to have your CV ready, to have your bio ready, a nice picture, very good quality, and just have everything in a Word document so that you can copy and paste it into the required fields. There were some questions that were emailed earlier, so I'm going to go ahead and I think Maithe answered most of them, but there was one in particular where people sometimes struggle. What makes it an oral or a podium presentation versus a poster presentation? Maithe, you want to take a gander at that one?
Sure. So I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. I think one of the example I gave earlier, I mean, if you want to show a lot, like if you want to show any video, obviously you can't do that on a poster. If you have a whole, for a poster, this is a little bit off topic, but you have to also think about how you're going to present your material. So, there are some studies or projects where you want to show a lot of data or you want to show specific photos. And sometimes on a poster, depending on the size, you just don't have the ability to do that. I think sometimes like for like qualitative studies, if you want to show a lot of your really like very meaningful exemplary quotes, that can be hard to do on a poster. We're in a podium presentation. I think, you can really get to, the heart of what the study or the message, if you can actually read those quotes rather than just put them on a poster and people read them to themselves. Or sometimes I've seen people present where their data is like video, they've actually like interviewed people and it's like video, not just audio recorded. And I think those are also really meaningful when you can actually see the video. So I think those are some of the things you can think about when you're trying to decide. I've also had some students tell me that there is no way they're going to stand in front of 500 people and give a presentation. And so we make it a poster.
It's always a very good way to start.
Yeah, and that way they're not intimidated, and then there's other things that really lend themselves to posters, depending on what the work is. And I think if it does lend itself to a poster, the other thing I love about posters is then you can make copies of your poster in color and hand those out, and you can't do that if you're doing a podium presentation. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there. I think it's the preference of the authors.
What you're comfortable
I don't know if
with.
you have any thoughts, but those are my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better myself. There's also one question here that says, are there any suggested topics needed to be presented? So from the Education Committee, I can tell you that we value the feedback received from our conference this year in Miami. And a lot of our members really want take home. They want something for their tool belt, so to speak. So it's nice to hear about something. It's nice to see what somebody did, but now they want things to take with them, to implement in their sites, to bring towards their institution or their clinical practice. So if you have developed a best practice or a strategy, or you have discovered something by accident like I did, feel free to work on that and submit that. So really what we're looking for is within our tracks, things that can be taken from our conference and actually be implemented and shared with the masses, so to speak, where it's just more than something that's good or nice that has been developed. Any other questions? Let's see. I think we answered most of the questions that we received beforehand. We answered it pretty much. I think we're right on point and on topic here. So, Stephanie, I'll give it back to you, being that there's no other questions. And
all right. Yes. Thank you, everybody. So if you just want to say your chance to say goodbye, if there's no other questions, and just as a brief reminder, this webinar is recorded and it will be available on the NAHN website later this week. Just give us a day or two. It will be on the annual conference page right next to where you can apply to submit an abstract. So again, thank you, both of you today, for a great lecture.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope to see you all in Portland, Oregon in July.
Bye, everybody. Have a
Bye,
great
everyone.
evening.